My name is Captain Nightwhisper, and tonight we're going to talk about a man who came back from patrol wearing the right uniform, carrying the right rifle, and answering every radio check with the exact voice his squad remembered. Except he wasn't the man who left the wire. I wish this was one of those stories you hear around a campfire, a rumor, a myth, a cautionary tale. But I've seen the logs, I've listened to the recordings, and I've read the statements from the men who were there the night something walked back into their forward operating base, wearing a soldier's skin like it was a costume. It happened at a small outpost deep in a mountain valley, a place isolated enough that help takes hours, and dark enough that shadows feel heavier than they should. A routine patrol. 3 men out, 2 men return. The third man showed up 27 minutes later. Same helmet, same kit, same blood type patch, same voice. But the thermal camera didn't see him. His shadow didn't match his body. And when he blinked, his eyes didn't blink together. What followed over the next 6 hours was documented, redacted, sealed, and buried under 7 layers of classification. And for good reason. Because whatever walked into that outpost was not human. It knew how to move like a man, how to breathe like a man, how to speak like a man, but it didn't understand what men fear. Not until they locked it inside. Tonight, on Captain Nightwhisper, this is the story of the soldier who returned from patrol wearing the uniform of a man he wasn't. He wore the uniform, but he wasn't human. Officially, they called it Forward Observation Site Archer 9. Unofficially, everyone just called it the box. It sat in a shallow bowl at the end of a mountain valley, ringed by steep rock and thin, crooked trees that looked like they'd grown wrong on purpose. There was only one road in, a broken ribbon of gravel that snaked along a riverbed and disappeared under the tree canopy for a full kilometer before spitting you out at the gate. It was the kind of place you build when you want to watch something, and the kind of place you forget you built when you don't want to talk about what you saw. On paper, Archer 9 housed 42 personnel. In reality, there were just enough bodies to keep the rotors spinning, the radios manned, and the perimeter walked without anyone getting more than 5 hours of sleep. Sergeant Kyle Durant had been in country long enough to know that places like this stuck to you. You came in with your regular habits, coffee, cigarettes, dark jokes about bad chow, and after a week, you started adding little rituals you couldn't explain. Touch the doorframe twice before stepping into the TOC. Count the seconds between lightning and thunder, even when there was no storm. Check the faces of your men twice when they came back through the gate. It wasn't superstition, it was survival. Because the valley had a reputation. Nothing official, nothing you'd hear in a briefing. Just the kind of talk that floated from unit to unit, changing details but keeping the same shape. Patrols went weird out there. Radios glitched in ways that couldn't be blamed on terrain. GPS coordinates shifted a few meters at a time, then snapped back. People came back jumpy, tired, with half-remembered impressions they couldn't put into words. No one had ever failed to return. Not completely. Until Bravo 2. 3 men, routine sweep of the east tree line. Radios checked, weapons cleaned. Same route they'd walked a dozen times before. Durant watched them leave from the little guard shack by the gate that morning, coffee cooling in his hand. Corporal Jaime Ortiz, short, wiry squad leader with a permanent 5 o'clock shadow and a grin that never quite reached his eyes. Specialist Evan Miller, the youngest in the squad, always cracking jokes a second too late. Private first-class Shu, quiet, sharp-eyed, the kind of guy who listened more than he talked. They'd slapped the checkpoint post as they stepped out, an unspoken ritual, then walked into the green tunnel of trees. Bravo 2, this is Archer Actual. Comms check, the lieutenant had said over the net. Bravo 2 copies loud and clear, Ortiz replied. Sun's up, sky's boring, valley's ugly, same as always. No one thought much of it. Another patrol in a long line of patrols. The valley didn't care about how many boots walked it. By the time the sun started dropping behind the ridge, only 2 men would walk back through that gate, and something else would follow. Later. The first part of the patrol was textbook. Ortiz kept them in loose staggered column along the narrow track, 1 man on the riverside, 1 on the tree side, 1 in the center. They checked old fighting positions, half-buried fire pits, and the kind of improvised rock cairns locals used to mark nothing and everything. Bravo 2 to Archer, passing checkpoint blue at 1150, Ortiz reported. No footprints, no tire tracks, no signs of love letters from anyone. Copy, Bravo 2, came the reply. Keep eyes up, we've got you on the board. They pushed deeper into the trees. The valley narrowed here, forcing the trail to hug a low ridge. The light filtered weirdly through the branches, turning the world into a greenish-gray soup. Hey, Miller said eventually, voice low. You guys noticed the birds? What about them? Shu asked. That there aren't any, Miller said. No bugs either, just saying. I've been on hikes. Nature's usually louder than this. Ortiz grunted. Nature's probably smarter than us, knows when to stay home. Radio signals started to fuzz in and out, as they always did under the canopy. Ortiz switched to shorter bursts, logging their position by estimated distance and bearing more than actual GPS. At 13-17 hours, something walked across their frequency. It wasn't a voice, at least not at first, just a burst of distortion that rose and fell like someone breathing too close to a mic. 2, back, 1 still outside. A fragment slipped through, warped. Miller stopped dead, hand going up automatically. Archer, say again last? Ortiz asked. You're cutting out. Didn't say anything, Archer's comms tech replied. Last traffic I have is your check 10 mics ago. The distortion surged again, louder now. Ortiz winced and yanked 1 ear cup, half off. This time, they all heard it. You, 3, in, 1. The words were wrong, the cadence off. Which will stay? Then the line cleared. Archer to Bravo 2, your signal's unstable, the tech said. Confirm your location. Ortiz looked down at his GPS. The coordinates jittered for a second, then stabilized. About 500 meters beyond blue, he said. Cutting back west to checkpoint Rook. He didn't mention the voice. He wasn't sure he could describe it without sounding crazy. It was like someone had recorded human speech and played it back through a machine that didn't understand emphasis. They pressed on. The first indication that something had gone very wrong didn't come from gunfire or an explosion. It came from sudden silence. Durant was in the Tosi by then, half watching the patrol's icon inch along a digitized map. One moment, their call sign blinked steady, their heartbeat monitors pulsing faint green. The next, all 3 heart rate telemetry feeds flatlined at once. Archer, actual? I just lost vitals on Bravo 2, the tech said, fingers flying over the console. Could be a sensor glitch, but... The radio cut in, high with static. Contact! Ortiz shouted. Multiple left! Miller, get down! There was a crack of gunfire, then nothing but a long, tearing sound Durant couldn't identify. Not a blast, not feedback, more like fabric ripping underwater, then dead air. Bravo 2, this is Archer actual. Respond, the lieutenant said. Ortiz, sound off. Miller, HU. Nothing. Durant felt the old familiar cold crawl up his spine. He'd heard that kind of silence before, in other places, with other men. This one felt worse. Spin up QRF? He asked quietly. The lieutenant hesitated. Give them 1 minute, he said, though his voice said he knew that was a prayer, not a tactic. Then we go. 54 seconds later, Ortiz's call sign flickered back to life. Archer, Archer, This is Bravo 2. Ortiz gasped over the net. We're still here. Durant exhaled for the first time in a full minute. Copy, Bravo 2, the LT said. What's your status? We lost you. Ambush, Ortiz said. I think, kind of, I don't... He stopped, forced his breathing under control. We took contact. Movement on our left, maybe high ground. No visuals. Shots came in. Weird. We broke contact, pulled back. 2 effectives. 1, his voice snagged. 1 missing. Durant met the LT's eyes. Miller? He asked, already knowing. There was a pause on the net. Affirmative, Ortiz said. Specialist Miller separated during break. Last visual was him moving to cover behind a rock. When we regrouped at rally point, he was gone. No blood, no gear, no comms. We called. No response. Time of loss? The LT asked. Ortiz checked his watch. Approximately 4 minutes ago. We're still within shouting distance of his last known. Requesting permission to attempt relink. The lieutenant looked at the map. At the valley. At the fading light. Negative, he said finally, voice dull. Return to base. We'll coordinate a full search element. It's getting dark, and if whoever hit you is still out there, you're exposed. There was another long pause. Copy, Ortiz said, the word tasting like surrender. Bravo 2 RTB. When Durant went back to the gate later, coffee untouched in his hand, he watched 2 men march out of the tree line. Ortiz. Shu. Both of them looked wrong in that way exhausted soldiers did. Eyes too wide, movements too precise. Discipline the only thing holding something inside from spilling out. The third man's absence was a physical thing between them. A missing weight. Durant checked their faces out of habit as they approached. Same skin, same dirt, same fear. He would remember that moment later, when someone else walked through that gate wearing Miller's uniform. And he'd realize that just because a face looked right, didn't mean anything inside it still belonged to the man he knew. They did everything by the book, weapons cleared and turned in, armor and helmets off, bodies checked for wounds. Shu had a graze along his forearm where something had kissed him on the way past. Ortiz's vest bore fresh scrapes across the plates where rounds had glanced. No obvious bullet holes in either of them. No enemy rounds recovered. No shell casings beyond their own. What about Miller? Durant asked in the debrief room, voice careful. Ortiz stared at the table for a long second before answering. He was right behind me, he said. We heard the first shots, these snapping sounds, like the air was tearing. I called contact left. He moved to peel off the path to a rock outcropping. Shu pulled back right. I dropped smoke and shifted to cover fire. When I got to the rally tree, Shu was there. Miller wasn't. You didn't hear him call out? The lieutenant asked. No shout, no pain, no anything? That's the thing, Shu said quietly. There should have been something. Even if he tripped and busted his ass, he'd have cursed. But it was like... He frowned, searching for the word. Like someone hit mute. Durant remembered the telemetry flatlining. Did you see any movement? He asked. Enemy silhouettes? Muzzle flashes? Nothing clear, Ortiz said. Shadows between the trees, maybe. I saw something on the ridge for a second. Shape of a man, I thought. But it was too narrow, too thin, too stretched. Next time I looked, it was gone. The lieutenant scribbled notes. We'll send a squad out at first light, he said. We'll get ISR assets over the valley too. Until then, get cleaned up. Get some food. We'll need you focused. They didn't find Miller in the morning. They didn't find him in the afternoon or on the second day's sweep. No blood trail, no discarded gear, no sign of struggle beyond a few crushed branches and a scuffed footprint that might have been his or might have been nothing. The report wrote him up as missing, presumed captured. The valley took one. That's how Durant thought of it. In other wars, The ground got greedy sometimes. Men stepped somewhere they shouldn't, and the earth decided to keep them. He tried to file it away with those other losses. 27 hours later, at 0213, someone buzzed the gate. Durant was on graveyard shift again, because there was never enough sleep and always too much dark to fill. The gate camera showed empty road, empty trees, empty riverbed. The buzzer sounded again, a sharp, insistent tone that only tripped when a hand hit the external plate. Durant frowned and leaned closer to the monitor. "Who's screwing around?" he muttered. The speaker crackled. "Gate, this is Bravo 2, a voice said, tinny through the intercom. "Open up." Durant's skin went cold. He knew that voice. He'd heard it 100 times over chow, over the net, over bad card games. Miller. His hand moved toward the release switch, without conscious thought, then stopped. He forced himself to hit the floodlights first. The road exploded into harsh white. A figure stood just inside the cone of light. Helmet, vest, rifle slung, boots dusty, right height, right build. Miller. He squinted up at the camera, raising a hand to shield his eyes. "Gonna stand there staring at me all night, Sarge?" he called. "It's cold out." Durant's mouth went dry. Protocol said you didn't open the gate for anyone without verifying them. Protocol also didn't have a section for dead man rings buzzer. He thumbed the internal net. "LT, you seeing this?" he asked. In the TOC, the lieutenant and the comms tech stared at the same feed. "That's impossible," the tech whispered. "Don't use that word," the LT said automatically, but it came out weak. "Gate, this is Archer Actual," the lieutenant said, selecting the external speaker. His voice echoed faintly across the yard and back from the trees. "State your full name and last four." "Miller, Evan J. 3429, the figure said without hesitation. "You want my birthday and favorite color too?" Every answer matched the file. "Where have you been, Specialist?" the lieutenant asked. There was a pause. Miller shifted his weight, oddly stiff. "Got turned around when you called us back," he said. "Took cover in a low spot when the shooting started. Radio went out. By the time I got it working again, battery was in the red, and I had no bars. Spent all day trying to get a signal and figure my way back. You've got some weird dead zones out there." Durant stared at the monitor. Miller's face was dirty, a little more drawn than he remembered, but it was his face. Same crooked nose, same healed scar on the chin from that time he'd lost a fight with a Humvee door. "We logged your vitals as flat at 1317, the tech murmured. "All three of them. Then two came back. He didn't." "We also swept your last known 3 times, Durant said, more to himself than the man outside. The lieutenant made a choice. "Open the gate, Sergeant," he said, "but don't let him out of your sight." Durant hit the switch. The outer gate groaned as it rolled back. Miller stepped through without looking back at the trees. It was only later, watching the footage again, that Durant would notice something. As Miller crossed the threshold between darkness and light, there was a single frame where his shape didn't quite match his shadow. At first, Miller did exactly what a man who'd been lost and scared would do. He submitted to a full pat-down without complaint, even cracked a joke about feeling extra loved. His gear checked out. Nothing missing, nothing extra. His dog tags were there. His rifle showed signs of use, a few fresh scratches, but no signs of tampering. "What year is it?" Durant asked, because he had to. Miller rolled his eyes. "You're not that old, Sarge. It's 2023. Month still June, right? Please tell me I didn't miss Thanksgiving." They laughed, awkward and too loud. In the medical bay, he sat shirtless on the exam table while the medic ran through a checklist. Pupils equal and reactive. Reflexes normal. Blood pressure a little low, but not concerning. Body temp slightly below average, but he'd been out in the cold. It tracked. "Any headaches?" Nausea? Ringing in your ears? The medic asked. Just hungry, Miller said, mostly for not being shot at by invisible assholes. They drew blood, more as a gesture than anything, started a saline drip, logged everything. When they were done, Durant walked him back to the barracks. You remember losing contact? He asked casually as they moved down the dim corridor. Anything weird right before? Miller shrugged. Just that noise, he said. Like someone dragging a metal chair across concrete, underwater, hurt my teeth, then everything just cut like someone took a pair of scissors to the world for a second. He stopped at the door to the sleeping bay and touched the frame twice before stepping in. Durant felt a cold electric twinge run up his spine. Did you always do that? He asked. Miller blinked. Do what? Tap the frame, Durant said. You just did it like it was habit. Miller frowned, looking at his own hand as if it belonged to someone else. Huh, he said. Guess I picked it up from you, Sarge. You do it every time. Durant opened his mouth to deny it, then stopped. He did do that. Had been doing it for weeks. Little ritual. Hadn't thought anyone noticed. He forced a laugh. Guess my bad habits are contagious, he said. Get some sleep, Miller. LT will want to talk to you again at 0800. Yeah, Miller said. Looking forward to it. Kind of. He moved to his bunk, motions precise. Lights went out. Night crept back in around the edges. For a while, everything seemed normal. It was the little things, over the next few hours, that started to catch. In the mess, Shu watched Miller spoon cold eggs into his mouth with mechanical regularity. Dude, Shu said finally, trying to break the tension. You planning to chew those, or just let them slide down whole? You eat like a printer. Miller looked up, smile a beat late. Guess I'm tired, he said. Body's on autopilot. He laughed, but the sound came a second after his mouth shaped it, like a voiceover out of sync with the film. In the hallway outside the rec room, two men passed him and instinctively scooted a little closer to the wall than they needed to. Later, neither of them could say why. He just felt like he was walking too close, one said. Like his footing was off, but it wasn't. Durant noticed it in the armory. He'd gone to check the CCTV footage because something in his gut wouldn't let him leave it alone. He pulled the feed from the gate, from the corridor, from the med bay. In every clip, Miller was there. Right uniform, right face, right voice. But on the thermal cameras, he was a whole. Everybody else showed up as pale ghosts against the cooler background, heat blooming around their faces, hands and joints. Miller was a silhouette of darker gray, not freezing cold, just absent, as if the system read the space he occupied as a gap in the world. Durant scrubbed back and forth through the footage, cycling between visual and thermal. There he was, sitting on the exam table, joking with the medic. Click, thermal, just the table and the medic. A blank, man-shaped void where Miller should be. He felt the hairs on his arms lift. There's some kind of calibration issue on camera 3? He asked the tech as casually as he could. The kid swiveled his chair. No, we checked it after that storm last week, he said. Why? Durant pointed at the screen. Because it's not seeing Miller, he said. The tech frowned, leaned closer. Maybe his temp's low, he said. Like really low. If he's hypothermic enough. That's not how that works, Durant said. Even corpses show up. They're just cooler than the living. This is nothing. Like it thinks there's no object there at all. The tech swallowed. Maybe. Don't mention that in your written report, he suggested quietly. Durant didn't answer. In the camera view, Specialist Evan Miller stood up from the exam table, pulled his shirt back on, and smiled at someone off frame. His smile was perfect, practiced, human. On thermal, darkness moved where a man should have been. The first man to say it out loud was Jackson. He came into Durant's office around midnight, face tight. "Sergeant, you got a second?" he asked. Durant was going through the loss report for Miller's original MIA status, already imagining the paperwork rewrites this would cause. "Make it quick," he said. "I'm elbows deep in bureaucracy." Jackson hovered in the doorway for a second longer than anyone who just wanted to chat. "It's about Miller," he said. Durant gestured to the chair. "Sit," he said. "What about him?" Jackson sat, then immediately stood again, too wired to stay still. "Something's off with him," he said. "I know that's obvious. I mean, more off than just, 'I was lost in the woods' off." Durant raised an eyebrow. "Examples," he said. "The shower," Jackson said. "We came off detail and hit the bay. Steam everywhere, hot as hell. 5 guys in there, we fogged up the mirrors in like 20 seconds. Miller stayed under the water the longest. When he stepped out, his skin was dry." Durant frowned. "Maybe he didn't—" "And his breath," Jackson pushed on. "When we walked back down the hall, everyone's talking. Everyone's got little puffs in the air, right? It's cold. He's talking too. No breath. Nothing." Durant felt something cold settle further into his gut. "You sure?" he asked. "I thought I was seeing things, so I looked again," Jackson said. Stared. Probably weirded him out. He noticed. After that, I swear I saw, like, fake breath. Like he was forcing it. Just little bursts at the wrong time. After he talked, not while. He tried to laugh it off and failed. "And his eyes," he said. "They're wrong." "In what way?" Durant asked, though he already knew he wasn't going to like the answer. "When he blinks," Jackson said. "He blinks, out of sync. First the left, then the right. Tiny delay. Like he learned the trick but hasn't quite nailed the timing." Durant sat back slowly. He thought of the telemetry flatlining, of the voice in the static, of the way Miller had touched the doorframe without remembering why. "All right," he said. "Don't spread this around. You see anything else? You tell me. Direct. No rumors." Jackson nodded and slipped out. Durant sat alone for a while, listening to the thin hum of the outpost, generators, ventilation, the distant echo of boots in a corridor. He pulled the camera feeds again. In the bunk room, Miller lay on his back, hands folded over his chest, eyes open. The other men shifted, turned, pulled blankets up, talked in their sleep. Miller didn't move. At 02:30, he sat up abruptly. No transition through groggy, half awake. One frame horizontal, next frame vertical. His head turned toward the camera. Not slowly, not fast. Just a clean mechanical pivot, like a turret orienting on a target. Durant leaned closer in spite of himself. Miller's lips moved. No audio reached the TOC. The bunk room mics were junk. Durant hit zoom. On mute, the words were easy to read. "How long can I wear this?" The angle was wrong to tell who or what he was addressing. The bunk above him, the ceiling, the darkness, himself. He blinked. Left eye, tiny pause, right eye. Durant's heart hammered against his ribs hard enough to hurt. He dug up Miller's intake interview from when he'd first joined the unit. They had video of everyone, little clips of them talking about home, about why they'd enlisted, the kind of thing Command liked to play at memorials. He played 6 seconds of that old Miller beside 6 seconds of the man currently sleeping in his bunk. Same face, same haircut, same scar. The eyes were wrong. Old Miller's gaze moved with his thoughts, darting, softening when he smiled, narrowing when he talked about something that pissed him off. Blinks were quick, unconscious. New Miller's gaze felt fixed, like he was operating the eyes manually, looking where he knew he was supposed to look without understanding why it mattered. Durant closed the files. For the first time since deployment, he locked his office door. They didn't have a protocol for this. There were binders for everything else. Unexploded ordnance, chemical leaks, lower back strain. Somebody had even put together a 3-page SOP on what to do if a monkey got loose from a local's house and wandered onto the base, because that had actually happened once. But nowhere, in all the training Durant had sat through, had anyone said, if a man who should be dead comes back wearing his own skin, and the cameras don't see him, and his blink is on a delay, do this. So they improvised. The lieutenant called it a precautionary medical hold. It sounded nice on paper. In reality, 4 men with loaded weapons and careful eyes escorted Miller to the small concrete room they used for isolation, normally for infectious disease risks, rarely for anything else. "We just want to run a few more tests," the medic said, trying to keep the tremor out of his voice. "Make sure you didn't pick up any local parasites out there. Valley's got weird stuff in the water." Miller smiled. "You guys are acting like I came back from Mars," he said. "I got turned around in the woods, that's it. Freaky, yeah, but not X-Files." "Standard," Durant said. "You know the drill. We keep you in here for observation for 24. You nap, eat, complain about the food. If nothing unusual shows up, we clear you." He hoped he sounded more convincing than he felt. Miller's eyes flicked to each of them in turn. There was a moment, a narrow, sharp sliver of time, where his expression went perfectly blank. Not angry, not scared, just neutral, as if something behind his face was weighing options. Then the grin came back, pasted on just a little too quick. "Whatever, Sarge," he said, "as long as someone brings me coffee." They sat him on the bunk, cuffed him, not to restrain officially, but for your safety specialist, so you don't fall out of bed if you pass out. It sounded thin. Camera in the corner watched everything. Visual showed a tired-looking soldier, wrists linked to the rail, feet planted on the floor. Thermal showed a blank patch of cooler air sitting on the mattress. In the TOC, Durant and the lieutenant watched the feed. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" the LT asked quietly. "That whatever came back with your patrol isn't standard Taliban kit," Durant said. "Or human," the LT said. They called higher. "Not the regular battalion headquarters, a different number. One of those codes you only dial if you want men in unmarked uniforms to show up later and make your memories their problem." They sent the logs, the thermal screenshots, the re-entry footage, the audio of the weird radio bleed. They waited. The reply came 4 hours later. "Maintain isolation. Do not allow subject to leave facility. Do not engage unless necessary to protect force. Contain until arrival of Special Handling Team. ETA, 12 hours. "Special handling," the lieutenant said. "That's comforting." Durant kept his eyes on the monitor. In the room, Miller, the thing in Miller, sat very still. Too still. Hours ticked by. No fidgeting, no stretching, no compulsive scratches at an itch or adjustments of position. He was as motionless as a mannequin, except for his eyes. They moved. Not much, but enough. First to the camera in the corner, then to the vent, then to the door, calculating angles, measuring. At 0213, he smiled without moving any other part of his face. The audio from the room crackled. "You can't keep me here," he said softly. Not a protest, a statement. The lieutenant leaned toward the speaker. "Who is me, Specialist Miller?" he asked, voice going formal by reflex. Miller lifted his head. Up close, his face was a catastrophe of almosts. Every expression was a fraction off. Smile too slow, eyes too still, brows not moving quite enough. "It's a good fit," he said, as if answering an entirely different question. "Soft, warm, like yours, but thin." "Thin?" Durant asked before he could stop himself. Miller looked straight into the camera. "Between you," he said, "and everything else." All the air in the TO seemed to go stale at once. The lieutenant cleared his throat. "What happened in the valley, Specialist?" he asked. "The truth, this time." Miller tilted his head, as if considering how to put it into words. "He left it open," he said finally. "The door. When he heard the noise, he thought, what if I stepped through instead of away?" Curiosity. Very human. His eyes flicked left, right, as if watching something only he could see. "One of him stepped aside," he said. "The other dropped through. The part that makes up his shape stayed. The part that remembers fell. I don't know where." Durant felt his pulse drum at his temples. "What are you?" he asked, the question ripped from him. Miller blinked, left, then right. "Hungry," he said simply. "Curious, learning." He strained against the cuffs, just once. Not hard. Testing. The metal creaked. "We've had visitors before," he said. "Long time ago. They stayed at the edges, watched from the tree line. This is better. Closer. I can see how you move, how you think, how you divide." "Divide?" the lieutenant asked. "You are not one," Miller said. "You are many. All separate, all together. So many ways to wear you." He smiled again, and this time it was a perfect mirror of the shy half-smile in his intake video, down to the tiny asymmetry in the corners. Durant's stomach turned. Whatever this was, it had watched their footage. It had practiced. Time stretched. Outside the isolation room, the outpost lived in a strange half-state. Everyone went through the motions, guard shifts, radio checks, equipment maintenance, while a quiet nuclear terror hummed under their rib cages. Word had gotten around, despite their best efforts. People didn't talk about it openly. They didn't have to. You could see it in the way they avoided saying Miller's name, in the way they made excuses to walk past the isolation room on the way somewhere else, in the way no one wanted to be alone in a hallway. Inside, the thing wearing Miller's uniform waited. It didn't sleep. At first, it mimicked the attempt. It lay down during designated night hours, eyes closed, breathing slowing and deepening to the pattern of someone drifting into rest. The machines watching him, however, told a different story. Brainwave readouts, such as they were on older military gear, didn't shift into any known sleep stage. Heart rate didn't dip the way it should. Core temperature stayed wrong. It was a performance without an audience. After a while, it gave up the pretense. It sat on the bunk, upright, and watched. At 10:12, it spoke aloud without prompting. "These are fragile," it said, flexing its fingers slowly. "So many small parts, so many failure points. Snap one piece, and the rest collapses." It twisted its wrist further than any human joint allowed. The bones didn't break. The skin stretched, then corrected, like a glitching image snapping back to default. In the TOC, Durant swore under his breath. "Is that going in the log?" the lieutenant asked faintly. "I don't think anyone upstairs wants to read this log," Durant said. Later, when the medic went in to check the IV, it watched him with too intense interest. "You leak," it said suddenly. The medic froze with his hand on the saline bag. "Humans leak," it clarified. "Blood, water, little currents of electricity. You call it bleeding when it goes wrong, but you are always leaking. Heat, noise, thought. I can taste it from here." The medic swallowed. "You're not getting anywhere near my veins," he muttered, more to himself than the subject. Miller's mouth curved. "You're safe," it said. "For now." At 14:37, it tilted its head, as if listening to something far away. "They're coming," it said. Durant keyed the mic. "Who is?" he asked, though the answer was already on the secure channel. "Special Handling Team inbound, ETA 1545. "The others," it said. "The ones behind the thin place. The ones who felt me step through. Curious, hungry, learning." It smiled, and for a heartbeat, its teeth were too many, too small, like a drawer full of mismatched knives. Then the image snapped back, just a tired soldier in a cramped room. There were other signs that the skin didn't quite fit, subtle warping under the surface, like something pushing from inside. The angle of the collarbone wrong for a frame or two. Fingers bending in ways they shouldn't when it forgot itself and had to remember to act. Once, for 3 horrid seconds, its face forgot how to be a face. Durant caught it on a frame-by-frame review later. One moment, Miller's features were arranged in a neutral expression. The next, everything was misaligned. Nose a little too far left, eyes slightly different sizes, mouth stretched too wide and too close to the chin, as if someone had scrambled the parts and put them back together from memory. Then it snapped back, and he was just Miller again. He rewound and played those 3 seconds 5 times. He never got used to it. The storm hit at 15:20. On the board, the Special Handling Team's helicopter icon moved steadily toward the valley, ETA ticking down. Outside, the sky went from clear to boiling black in 10 minutes. Durant watched the feed from the gate camera as the first fat drops of rain spattered the dust. Within 60 seconds, it was a wall, sheets of water driven sideways by gusting wind, turning the world into a gray blur. "Where the hell did that come from?" Jackson muttered. "Mountains do what they want," someone else said. It sounded weak. Lightning flashed, close enough to rattle the fillings in their teeth. Thunder rolled over the valley in long, grinding waves. On the status board, the helicopter's icon flickered. "Archer, this is Blackbird 1, the pilot's voice cut in, chopped by interference. "We've hit unexpected weather, heavy turbulence, near zero visibility, holding pattern at 5 clicks out until we get a break," the lieutenant swore under his breath. "Copy, Blackbird," he said. "We've got a situation on site. Isolation subject is contained, but we'd really appreciate your ugly faces sooner rather than later." "Doing what we can," the pilot said. "Right now, if we push into that cell, we're part of your landscape." The line crackled. In the isolation room, the subject smiled. "You feel it," it said softly. "Don't you? How thin it is here. How easy it is to push." The lights flickered. Not entirely out. Not yet. Just a momentary dimming, like the building had blinked. All over the outpost, men paused. They shared the same thought. Unsaid. Not now. Not with that in the box. In the TOC, monitors glitched. For a second, the camera feeds showed static. Then half of them popped back. The isolation room stayed dark. "Camera 3 just died," the tech said. "Power's still going to the room, though. It's just the feed." "Reset it," Durant snapped. "I am. It's not—" The kid stopped, swallowed. "It's not responding." The audio, at least, still worked. They heard something moving in the room. Not the small sounds of a man adjusting position. Something heavier. Flesh and fabric and metal restraints protesting. Metal snapped. The sound was sharp and unmistakable. "Containment breach," the lieutenant said, voice suddenly very calm. "Lock that door, now." The tech hit the override. Somewhere down the hall, thick bolts slammed home. "Door's sealed," he said. "Even if he rips the cuffs out of the bed, he's not—" Something hit the door from the inside. Not like a shoulder slam. Not like someone kicking. Like a hand pressed flat, spreading pressure across the whole surface. The frame groaned. Over the intercom, the subject laughed softly. "This skin breaks," it said. "You do not make them to hold this." Durant grabbed his rifle. "Sergeant," the lieutenant began. "I'm not going in there," Durant said. "But if that door buckles, I want to be the first thing it sees on this side." Another impact. This time the light above the door flickered too. The air felt heavier, like the pressure had changed. "Stop," the lieutenant said into the mic, because he had to, because it was in the script, and humans clung to scripts when things stopped making sense. "Specialist Miller, cease and desist. That door will not open. You will only injure yourself." The voice that came back was wrong, twinned, layered, Miller's tone overlaid with something deeper, slower, like an echo from a deeper well. "There is no Miller," it said. "There is only what you wore, what you leave behind when you think you died." The temperature in the TOC dropped a degree. On the audio, a new sound bled through. Whispering. Not words they could make out, not language, just layered susurration, like dozens of mouths moving behind concrete. Durant's skin crawled. "How many?" the lieutenant asked before he could stop himself. "How many of you came through?" The whispering rose in pitch, then broke off in what might have been amusement. "Just me," it said. "For now. But others, press against the thin. You make such good doors." The third impact on the door was less like a hit and more like pressure, leaning. The concrete around the frame creaked, cracks spidered out from the top corners, fine at first, then widening. "Everyone with a weapon on this hallway now," Durant barked into the net. His voice came out sharper than he intended. "Firing line on the door. Anything that comes through that is not obviously and completely human does not walk away." Men took positions, boots thudded, safeties clicked. In the isolation room, its voice dropped to a murmur. "Come and see," it crooned. "Come and see how it looks when the inside steps out." For a split second, the camera feed flashed back to life. Durant saw a shape, mid-motion. Miller's skin distended, stretched from the inside like a balloon being filled with the wrong-shaped object. Fingers elongated, joints bending backward. Shadows moved under the flesh like eels in a sack. Then the feed died again, and mercifully, the image went with it. The next hit on the door never landed. Lightning struck near the compound, close enough that the flash turned night into day, and the crack shook dust from the ceiling. Every light went out. The generators stuttered. For 3 long seconds, the world was dark. Something moved in that dark, not in sound, in pressure. Durant felt it pass by him in the hallway like a cold front, a sense of presence, tall and narrow, brushing against the edges of his awareness. No footfalls, no breath, just the feeling of being noticed by something standing far too close. When the emergency lights flickered on, the door to the isolation room was intact. The cuffs inside lay empty on the floor. The room was vacant. "Check the cameras," the lieutenant said, voice thin. Every feed showed static. Every feed but one. The gate camera flicked back a second early. For a heartbeat, it captured a shape at the edge of its frame. Something wearing Miller's uniform, stepping through the fence as if the metal were smoke, head turned toward the trees, going home. The special handling team arrived 90 minutes later, once the storm passed. They came in a sleek black helicopter that didn't ping on the regular tracking system, wearing uniforms with no unit patches, carrying cases with no labels. They listened to the story without interrupting. Durant watched their faces as he told it. Expected disbelief, mockery, accusations of stress, of group hysteria. He saw none of that. He saw recognition. "Thermal void?" one of them asked. "Blink out of sync?" Durant nodded slowly. "Yeah," he said. "You've seen this before." The man didn't answer. He just wrote something down in a notebook and flipped to the next page. They collected the footage, every clip, every screenshot, the audio logs, the telemetry, the door status records. They pulled the hard drives from the cameras and replaced them with fresh ones like they were swapping a magazine. When they were done, they asked everyone to sign non-disclosure agreements that told the soldiers nothing they didn't already know, that talking about this would be a bad idea. "What do we tell the men?" the lieutenant asked after the last signature dried. The team leader shrugged slightly. "That Miller was returned to higher care for evaluation," he said. "That he's alive, which technically is not entirely untrue." "Is he?" Durant asked before he could stop himself. "Alive?" The man met his eyes. "Something that thinks," he said. "Something that learns, something that can choose. That's close enough for government work." He stood. "The official line is ambush, hostile action, psychological trauma," he said. "Your people saw strange things, misinterpreted stress reactions, filled in gaps with superstition. It happens. In the report." "And unofficially?" Durant asked. Unofficially, the man didn't answer. But later, when they were alone for a moment near the gate, he paused. "You did the right thing locking it down," he said. "Most places they just let them blend." Them, plural. "Is it out there?" Durant asked, looking toward the tree line. The man followed his gaze. "If it wants to be," he said. "But these things seem to lose coherence over time. The more they wear us, the more they remember they're not shaped like us. They fall apart eventually." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" Durant asked. The man's mouth twitched. "It's supposed to make you understand why we haven't burned the whole valley," he said. "We don't know what else we'd wake up." They left as quickly as they'd come. The valley went back to its routines. Patrols ran, though not along the old path. Radios called and answered. The wind moved through the trees. Everything in the official record said that Specialist Evan Miller had been recovered alive from a disoriented state, then transferred to higher medical authority for observation. His status in the system read, "Active, temporary medical hold." It would say that for a long time. In the barracks, at night, men woke up sometimes with the sensation that someone was standing over their beds, watching. They'd blink, sit up, scan the room. Empty. Their hearts would slow. They'd lie back down. And sometimes, as they were drifting off again, they'd hear their own breath in the dark. Just theirs. No one else's. Imposters are one of our oldest fears. Doppelgangers, skinwalkers, changelings. The idea that someone you love walks back into your life with the right face, the right memories, and something is just off. You can laugh at those stories when they're wrapped in folklore. It's harder when the cameras agree with you. When the thermal feed says there's nothing standing where your friend is smiling. When the blink is half a beat slow. When the door logs say, "No one left the room," and you're still sure the thing that walked past you in the hallway was not born anything like you. Officially, the incident at Archer 9 never happened. If you could see the report, you'd find phrases like combat stress response, coincidental equipment malfunction, and mass misperception under duress. All very clean, all very human. But ask the men who were there. Ask the medic who watched a wrist bend too far without breaking. Ask the comms tech who replayed the footage frame by frame and saw a face lose track of itself for 3 long seconds. Ask Sergeant Durant, who stood in a reinforced hallway and felt something tall and cold pass by him in the dark, close enough that his breath paused without him deciding to hold it. They'll tell you that something wore the uniform. It knew the words, it knew the habits, it knew how to smile, but it didn't know how to be uncomfortable, didn't know how to fidget when you're nervous, how to slouch when you're tired, how to blink in sync with your own thoughts. It didn't understand why humans do the things we do without thinking, and that was what gave it away. Maybe that's the only thing standing between us and whatever presses against those thin places. Not our guns, not our fences, not our classifications, just the tiny, unrecorded, unteachable habits that make us human. The way you tap a door frame twice without knowing why. The way your eyes move when you talk about something that hurts. The way your friends can tell when the person standing in front of them is wearing your face, but not your fear. Specialist Evan Miller's file still exists somewhere, in a drawer or a server, or a room with no windows. It says he came back. It does not say what came back with him, or what stepped out of him and went walking into the trees. So the next time someone you know walks into the room after a close call, same face, same voice, same uniform, watch them for a moment. Don't look at the smile. Look at the spaces between the smiles. Listen to how they breathe. Watch how they blink. And if, just for a second, the skin doesn't seem to fit quite right, you might want to make sure the door behind them is still closed. My name is Captain Nightwhisper. Thank you for staying with me through the dark. Some uniforms hide bruises, some hide secrets, and some aren't being worn by anything that was ever meant to wear one at all.